Good morning, or good afternoon, I should say. This meeting of the California Underground Safety Board is now called to order. Secretary, please call the roll.
Bianchini.
Present.
Charland.
Here.
Del Toro.
Here.
Johns.
Here.
Johnson.
Present.
Munoz. Voss.
Here.
Thank you. Before we start, I'll review safety information for those of you in person. In the event of an evacuation, proceed out the doors to the back of the room. Take a left at the atrium, walk past the restrooms, and use the P Street doors to exit the building. Your assembly point is across the street in Roosevelt Park. The meeting will proceed in the same manner as previous meetings, which we will have audience participation in person and remotely. We ask that everyone please be aware of crosstalk by ceding the floor as necessary to one another and each taking a turn to comment. When the chair calls for public comments, we ask that those attending in person who wish to comment, please walk up to the microphone at the front of the room. Will staff please point out the direction of the microphone? Thank you. Those attending via webinar who wish to provide public comment may press the raise hand button in the webinar or dial #2 to be placed in query. When staff calls your name, you may unmute yourself and provide your comment. Thank you all for your patience and understanding as we meet today. First of all, Happy New Year, everyone. Glad to see you all here. We're going to go ahead and proceed to item 2, which is public comment items not on the agenda. If you would like to make a comment, please go up to the microphone. For those on the webinar, press the raise hand button, #2, or enter the query. We will start with in-person comment. I will need staff to let me know if there's no one up.
There are no public comments.
Thank you. Seeing no in-person comments, we will move to webinar comments. Host, are there any webinar comments?
We have a hand raised from Preston Pipelines.
Okay, please proceed.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board for allowing me to speak with you today. My name is Logan Downer. I am the Field Operations Coordinator at Preston Pipelines. And I'm here today to file a complaint with this board against USA North for an unfair bias towards utility operators and attempting to act as a legal authority, which they are not. And I would like to first talk to you about the new ticket management system put in place by USA North, and then talk about how they have attempted to act as a legal authority. As I'm sure you're aware, USA North launched their new online ticket management system, One Call Access, last month. This new system was launched on Friday, December 16th. From this point, every excavator managing tickets with USA North has 28 days to migrate their existing tickets from the previous system to the new one. Unfortunately, the system was designed in a way that excavators have to move each ticket one at a time. And to make it worse, all data must be manually entered into this new system, and the map of the work area must be redrawn because it did not transfer. And on top of all of that, it was done 1 week before the Christmas holiday, when many excavators have staff on vacation. I was told personally by James Wingate that he was going to involve myself and 2 other excavators in the testing process, and that they would be happy to have us because they would be happy to have us test and give feedback to improve the system from the very beginning, because we were knowledgeable and impressed him with our commitment to damage prevention. We were really excited and appreciative that Mr. Wingate considered us for this opportunity. Unfortunately, we were never given the chance to test this system or provide any feedback. At least I wasn't. And from an excavator point of view, and based on the final deliverable, I do not believe other excavators were consulted either. I fear that the system released by USA North is going to create a potential unsafe situation in the field. I'd like to provide some examples for you if I'd be able to share my screen.
Sorry, there's no screen sharing from public comment, but
okay, I can send stuff over to staff after if that helps, but for now I'll just read through what I have, if that's okay.
Yes,
Yes,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Okay, so let's see here. Let me get back to where I was. Sorry about that. So in addition to all of this, the contract with the developer of the previous system expired at midnight on December 31st. The previous system went offline 15 days after the new system went online, which left excavators 13 days, nearly 50% of the time frame for the life of a ticket, without any access to the previous system that still housed all of those ticket numbers. They still lived within that system and the maps that went with them. And the maps do not transfer, so we needed the old system to quickly access the old ticket to get the maps for the new tickets, which, as you know, affects which operators are notified of the work area, creating another potentially unsafe situation in the future. Additionally, this new system still does not allow excavators in the northern part of the state to batch renew their tickets. We still have to renew our tickets one by one. And USA North has said publicly many times that they do not want excavators just keeping tickets open. However, it is really none of USA North's concern how long we want to keep a ticket open. The law allows us to renew a ticket every 28 days in perpetuity. Additionally, there's no expiration date sort in this system, so it makes it even more difficult for excavators who have renewed tickets coming up for expiration. We have no way of, quickly checking, did I get everything? Did I make sure before the day ends that all of my tickets have been renewed? So this creates another potentially unsafe scenario where tickets could unknowingly expire. And after termination of the old system, this new system is failing to pull up ticket data on numerous occasions, making it even more difficult for us to enter ticket information. You enter in ticket number of your old ticket and it says ticket not found when it's a clearly active ticket, and you have to try another way to find that information so you can move it over. This new system that USA North has brought to us it will not let you submit your ticket if you do not meet their ticket size policies. I read 4216 cover to cover, and it does not allow USA North to have a policy on anything. They're a conduit passing along my or other excavators' intention to excavate to the operator. It's really none of their concern how large we choose to make our tickets. This new system is disadvantageous to excavators while helping prepare operators with all information needed in a future claim against the excavator. Many of these new fields required to submit a ticket are going to create potentially additional unsafe situations in the field, and I'd like to share some of these with you. The first one, the max depth of our excavations. My experience in the past few years of working with Preston and working with utility operators and locators is that the locators are struggling to meet the demands in this, to get out and mark all these tickets. And when we start listing the max depth, it's going to create a situation where locators, if they know that they're below that, it's going to get marked clear, no conflict. I've seen things happen in the interest of time, and the situation on site can change. And then now all of a sudden we're digging deeper than what it said on that ticket, and we could potentially strike utilities that are now unmarked. And when the collection agency comes, they're going to bombard the excavator with claims saying that we went below our max depth, and it's going to come back at us. And when you read 4216, the operator is not required to provide us with the depth of their installation. So I think equally, we should not be required or even encouraged to give them the depth of our excavation. And in the interest of everyone's safety, we should assume everything is right there. There are other problematic questions in this new system, like the duration of work and whether or not the work area will only take place within paved surfaces. Duration of work will be used against excavators if they work past this date. It's not legally required for us to provide this, and it should be removed. The excavator is allowed to renew the ticket every 28 days. And if we have to, continue to call in more tickets and more tickets because we went past our time frame that we listed as our working time, it's just going to add to locator demand, not help it. So I think removing that would be in the interest of everyone. But the other question about whether or not the work area will only take place within paved surfaces is extremely dangerous, because again, as situations can change, when we call in a ticket and we say we're not going to leave the paved surfaces, and then landscape areas don't get marked, and then a change order is issued, and now the excavator is going to excavate off of the paved area where they may hit utilities that were not marked. There's no safe reason to ask this question. And if there are utilities within the delineations The operators need to mark them no matter what. It shouldn't matter whether or not we are going to leave the paved surface. If we listed a delineation, it should be assumed we need everything in that area marked. The whole purpose of the safety of the workforce and the general public, and it is all at stake. And this question puts everybody at risk. This new system limits excavators to 250 characters for no response entries and requires the excavator to manually list the names of the operators failing to respond, using up even more of the very few characters available. For comparison, Twitter allows 280 characters. We need to be able to have a voice on these tickets to protect ourselves in the event of future claims. The character limit should be removed altogether. Operators are allowed to respond to the excavator with any response that they want. Excavators have no option to respond, and the only tool where we can, the no response, has been reduced to 250 characters. And I believe that an operator should never be allowed to state that we have agreed to a negotiated marking schedule. That should be able to be filed by the excavator, as it's unlikely an operator would ever propose us granting them more time to mark. As an excavator, I don't want the operator to ever speak for me. Now, I'd like to move on to issues I've had where USA North is attempting to act as a legal authority. I've been told in writing by USA North's web operations manager that even though 4216 doesn't say so, that the state law and call center policies are designed to work in conjunction. The email read, "I understand your point of view and you're correct. There isn't anything specified in the law. However, being that we're the utility notification center for the area, our procedures also must be followed. State law and the protocols of underground service alert work in conjunction." 4216 defines the call center as follows. Regional Notification Center means a nonprofit association or other organization of operators of subsurface installations that provides advance warning of excavations or other work close to existing subsurface installations for the purpose of protecting those installations from damage, removal, relocation, or repair. Nowhere in this definition does it state that the call center is anything more than a conduit to alert operators of excavators' intentions to dig near their utilities. The above issues with the new system contradict the idea that state law and USA North policies work in conjunction anyway, as the new system prevents excavators from adhering to the law in multiple instances during the use of this new system. Every time I submit a ticket with USA North, if they don't like the way something's worded, I get an email saying that my ticket is invalid. And again, 4216 doesn't give USA North any authority to determine what would or would not be a valid ticket. And furthermore, 4216 doesn't even specify what makes a valid ticket. And in the past, when I've disagreed with the assertion that our tickets are invalid, I was threatened by USA North to have my online access revoked and they forced me to call in tickets over the phone, where I could only work on 3 tickets per phone call and I have to call in and wait on hold again. Threatening one of the largest excavators in the state to impede their ability to safely excavate is not the purpose of the call center, and it is not in the spirit of safe excavation. Not every company has the resources to have an employee dedicated to this matters. Preston's an industry leader in this area, and we host classes multiple times per year with United Contractors. We do our best to help other excavators understand what 4216 says, how they can excavate safely within the scope of the law. I say this because I think it is important to identify that a company with our size and resources and as much knowledge as we have on this subject are having this many issues with USA North. How bad is it for the smaller, less experienced operations? This new system cutover was made so difficult, we worry about how many excavators decided dealing with USA North was no longer worth it. James Wingate has said in these meetings that they are working to build trust in the 811 process. This new system appears to contradict that mission. Based on the apparent bias towards the operators who fund them and their efforts to act as an authority figure outside the scope of the law, I ask this board to act in their full capacity to take over management of the operator-funded regional notification centers. As has been made clear, that as long as they are run by the operators, there will not be a fair environment for excavators. Actions of the operator-controlled call center are potentially creating an unsafe California. We can and must do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you head out, would you mind repeating your name first and last and spell the last name?
Logan, Logan, last name Downer, Downer.
Mr. Downer, thank you. We've certainly heard your comments, and I believe we have item 6, so we'll be discussing this new system. So thank you. We appreciate you being here. Any other webinar comments?
There are no other hands raised for comment.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, we will proceed. The next item before us is an action item to approve the minutes from the November meeting. We'll begin by taking public comment on this item. If you would like to make a comment, please go up to the microphone. For those on the webinar, press the raise hand button or pound 2 to enter the query. We will start with in-person comments. Staff, are there any in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
Thank you. Seeing no in-person comments, we will move to webinar comments. Host, are there any webinar comments?
There are no hands raised for webinar comments.
Thank you. A draft of the minutes for November meeting was distributed to you, your meeting packets for review. Does any board member have any correction to the minutes as distributed? If you have a correction to the minutes, please state the correction. See no corrections to the minutes. Are there any objections to approving the minutes as distributed? Hearing no objections, I will entertain a motion on approval for the minutes for the November meeting as distributed.
Madam Chair, I'll make a suggestion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
And this was member, I'm sorry,
Bianchini?
Bianchini. A motion was made by member Bianchini. A second?
Member Voss, I'll second it.
A second was made by member Voss. Please vote by stating yes, no, or abstain when your name is called. Secretary, please call roll and record the votes.
Bianchini,
Yes.
Charland,
Yes.
Del Toro,
Yes.
Johns,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Munoz,
Yes.
Voss.
Yes.
The minutes for the November meeting are approved are approved. Moments. The next item before us is an action item for election of chairperson and vice chairperson pursuant to Government Code 4216.14E and Policy G-02. We will first take public comment. Following that, we will nominate and select a chairperson. The first act of the new chair will then be to preside over the nomination and selection of the vice chairperson. As I was elected chair in both 2021 and 2022, I am not eligible to serve as chair this year. We begin with public comment. If you would like to make a comment, please go up to the microphone, or for those on the webinar, press pound 2 to enter the query. We will start with in-person comments. Any in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
Seeing no in-person comments, we will move to the webinar comments. Host, are there any webinar comments?
There are no hands raised for comment.
Thank you. Seeing no comments, we'll proceed. The procedure will be as follows. Board members will have an opportunity to nominate a board member for the office. If nominated, a board member may decline the nomination. Once all nominations have been received, members may discuss them. Upon conclusion of discussion, we will hold a roll call vote. If there is more than one nominee, board members are asked to vote by stating the name of the nominee they wish to vote for, or if they wish, they may abstain. Are there any nominations from the board for chairperson?
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Member Munoz if she would accept.
Member Munoz?
I will accept. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bianchini. Are there any other nominations for chairperson? If there are no more nominations for board chairperson, we'll proceed to board discussion on the nomination. Secretary, please read the name of the nominee.
Board's chairperson nominee is member Munoz.
Is there any discussion from the board about this nomination? Wow, we trust you, girl. See no discussion, we'll proceed with the election. When your name is called, please respond with yes, no, or abstain. Secretary, will you please read the name of the nominee one more time and then proceed with roll call vote?
Member Munoz,
Yes.
Now the vote, please.
Bianchini,
Yes.
Charland,
Yes.
Del Toro,
Yes.
Johns,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Voss,
Yes.
Secretary, please read back the votes and total of nominee. Total number of votes received.
6 votes.
Thank you. I now recognize Member Munoz as chairperson of the board. Congratulations, Member Munoz, or Chair Munoz. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the next election, the next item on the agenda, which will be to nominate the vice chairperson.
Member Bianchini, I have a nomination of a recently retired board member, Member Johnson, that might step in if needed.
Member Johnson, do you accept the nomination?
Humbly will have to decline at this time. Thank you.
Member Voss, I would like to nominate Mr. Johns.
Madam Chair, I'd like to second that nomination.
Member Johns, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, guess I do, but I was going to nominate Member Voss since he's eligible again. So, yeah, I'd like to nominate Member Voss too, but yes, I would accept it if you want me to.
All right, so we have 2 nominations. Let's break them apart. So Member Johns accepted the nomination, and he would also like to nominate Member Voss.
Member Johns, I respectfully thank you for nominating me, but I respectfully decline. I think everybody should have an opportunity to do this.
So we only have 1 member that was nominated that has accepted the nomination, Member Johns. Do we have any other nominations? Right. If there are no more nominations for board for vice chairperson, we will close the nomination and proceed to board comments before conducting the election. Is there any discussion? All right, Secretary, please read the names of the nominees.
The nominees is Member Johns and Member Voss. I'm sorry, Member Johns only.
Is there any discussion on this, on Member John's nomination? All right, seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed with the election. When your name is called, please respond with the name of the nominee you would like to vote for, or respond with abstain if you wish to abstain. Secretary, will you please read the names of the nominees one more time and then proceed with the roll call vote?
The nominee is Member Johns. And I will proceed with roll call. Bianchini,
Yes.
Charland,
Yes.
Del Toro,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Munoz,
Yes.
Voss.
Yes.
Secretary, please read back the vote totals.
There are 6 votes for Johns.
The chair recognizes Member Johns as vice president of the board. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
We will move on now to item 5, resolution 23-01-01, board policies. The next item before the board is an active item on resolution number 230101. Staff will present an annual review of the 21 existing board policies and propose amendments to policies for adoption by the board. Mr. Marino, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board policies are up for review on triennial, biennial, and annual cycles as identified in the policies themselves. This year, many of the cycles lined up and 16 of the 21 policies are up for your review. Staff identified 3 specifically that we're recommending updates to. All 3 updates are related to the passage of SB 865 in 2020. The first, policy B01, is history, and staff proposes to update the history to identify that the board was created at the Office of the State Fire Marshal, and then in January 2022 moved to the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety. Staff also proposes to change policy A-04, accountability to the legislature, to recognize that SB 865 changed the legislative review, which had originally just been on or after a certain date, January 1, 2020, and SB 865 changed it to be once every 3 years. And then finally, staff proposes to change policy C-01, compliance with legislative and administrative process requirements, to recognize that that the board has moved from the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection to the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety, and also using the more common name for the Department of Human Resources. And those are the policies that staff proposes changes to. Happy to answer any questions.
We will proceed. Thank you, Mr. Marino. We will proceed to public comments on this item. If you would like to make a comment, please come up to the microphone. For those on the webinar, press the raise hand button or #2 to enter the queue. So we'll go ahead and start with the in-person comments. Staff, are there any in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
Seeing no in-person comments, we'll move to the webinar comments. Host, are there any webinar comments?
There are currently no hands raised for comment.
Seeing no public comments, we will return to the board. Would any member like to begin the discussion? With no
Madam
discussion,
Chair,
go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, I don't see any issues with the resolutions and the changes in the policies.
Thank you.
Member Voss here, I agree that all the changes proposed fit what needs to be happened to make them current and updated.
Is there any further board discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion from the board to approve resolution 23-0101.
Member Voss here, I make a motion that we approve resolution number 23-01-01 that amends policies B-01, A-04, and AC and NC-01, dealing with the history and accountability of the legislative compliance regime created by SB 865.
Madam Chair, I second that.
All right, a very thorough motion was made by member Voss, followed by a second from member Johnson. We will move to a vote. Please vote by saying yes, no, or abstain when your name is called. Secretary, please call roll.
Bianchini,
Yes.
Charland,
Yes.
Del Toro,
Yes.
Johns,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Munoz,
Yes.
Voss.
Yes.
Motion is adopted. All right, we have a 15-minute break on the schedule. Do we want to go ahead and take that, or do we want to push through?
Member Voss, push through.
All right, let's push through. Let's move on to item 6, One Call Center updates. The next item before the board is an information item on updates from the One Call Center, Dig Alerts, and USA North 811. Ms. Diamond, would you like to begin?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Munoz. Let me get my screen sharing here. All right. Come on. This is our key statistics through the end of 2022. At the November meeting, I had touted that we had taken our 21st millionth ticket, and you know, it had only taken us 11 months and 21 days to take it. So we were hoping we would have 1 million tickets for the year, for the calendar year, and we did. It's the first time ever in 46 years that Dig Alert has had 1 million tickets taken in a year. So we were very excited about that. It was taken on December 14th. So I'm hoping now with the, you know, new infrastructure bill, California broadband projects, that we're going to be able to take 1 million tickets every year. Also, our web ticket percentage is climbing. That 1 millionth calendar year ticket was done by a person with web. Our CSR utilization is right in the sweet spot. You want it between like 65 and 70%. So 2022 was pretty good for Dig Alert, and we did have a almost 11% increase in our ticket volume. Our key are our 2022 EPR statistics. These are the final ones for 2022. These 4 at the bottom, bad address, no access to locate, no delineation in delineated area doesn't match the ticket. That would be what we would have excavators now use as a return trip ticket. The government code does say that if the area isn't delineated, the members may choose not to mark. More 2022 EPR statistics. The extraordinary circumstances in 2022, those 7,951 is 97% less than what the use was in 2021. The member didn't respond by required time. That's going to be an ongoing thing. These are the EPR responses by the required time. When EPR became a requirement in the law, something wasn't really considered, and that was that the lines had to be marked by the legal excavation start date and time, and the EPR had to be in by that same legal start date and time. Some companies have it where their locators go out and do all of their locating and don't respond as they finish them, but bring all of that information back into the company or back into the office, and then they send that information out. So if they have just, you know, made it under the wire and the lines are marked, but the response isn't in, that's something that was kind of a conflict as far as you can't really do both at the same time always. The California Regional Common Ground Alliance is introducing legislation that is looking at changing the definition of a workday to not include the hours of 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Because what happened with the DigSafe Act of 2016, it inadvertently made it so that minimum legal notifications would have a start time of 5:01. I understand that doesn't fix the over 500,000 that there were no response, but changes take time. I did want to show that in 2022, by month, EPR responses that were on time, late, or there was no response. The on time went up each month, and the late and no responses went down. Everybody should be responding on time. Change does take time. We are having our member services, they get a report every month, and they are contacting members who are not using EPR. So we are still trying to get people to do what they're supposed to do by law. But sometimes you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. And we have the same issue even with getting excavators to use, you know, our online services, or excavators getting a ticket in the first place because they think that what they're doing isn't actually excavation. Or they're not going to get a ticket because owners don't mark on private property. Owners do mark what they own and maintain. You know, between November and December, we don't do a whole lot of education. But thank you, Chairperson Munoz, for reaching out to the AVID students at Upland High School. They got an early holiday gifts. We want to thank you for doing that. You contacted us. We were more than happy to give out, to send you some swag to give out to everybody. And these are some pictures of the students and their swag. And finally, some of our 2023 projects. The center's member database will be part of Northfield's new Logix platform. We're going to update our DigAlert app. We're going to continue doing our monthly webinars as well as our new 811 process training that's available, that will be available by the end of the first quarter online. Available 24/7, but we're also going to do a curated one. Amber will kind of walk people through one once a month. GeoLogix is a new mapping platform that will be integrated into our ticket taking software. We had hoped to have it implemented in December, but since we had a ticket format change January 1, we waited so that it didn't have to be put in both the old ticket format and the new ticket format. The new mapping has APIs that gets information from satellites and government agencies. It tiles like Google. It'll have topography views, satellite views, and hybrid, as well as geocoding. As I mentioned, our member services is reaching out to members who have not been using EPR. In 2022, we worked with a company for rebranding, especially on our social media. So look for some new information on our socials. And DigAlert does a quality control or quality assurance on 100% of our new tickets for mapping. We want to make sure that if the ticket reads that they're going east on a street, that the mapping doesn't show it going west. We're going to have some machine learning, artificial intelligence on what we consider an error, so our staff won't have to look at over 500,000 new tickets. And those are some of the things that we're looking forward to in 2023. Thank you. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hyman, for your presentation. We will proceed to public comments on this item. If you would like to make a comment, please come up to the microphone. For those on the webinar, please press the raise hand button or #2 to enter the queue. We'll go ahead and start with the in-person comments. Are there any in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
Seeing no in-person comments, we'll move to webinar comments. Host, are there any webinar comments?
There are currently no hands raised for webinar comments.
All right, seeing there's no in-person or webinar comments, we will proceed. Will any members?
Apologies, we got a hand raised from board member Charland.
Oh, so we'll go to board. Is that board comments? You said that you broke up a little bit.
Sorry, board Randy Charland.
Okay, so let's proceed to board discussions.
I think one thing to consider, Madam Chair, we still need to hear from USA North.
Okay.
And so may we hear from USA North before we get to board discussion?
All right, let's go ahead and sorry about that. Let's go ahead and go to 811 USA North. Mr. Wingate, you want to go ahead and start?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, great. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members and members of the public. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share some information with you about what's been happening at Underground Service Alert of Northern California, Nevada, or USA North 811. First, I'd like to respond to the issue that was raised in the public comments. I think Mr. Downer's comments are entirely valid from his perspective. Although I hope this meeting is being recorded, well, I know it's being recorded, but I hope the meeting will be available for people to hear the recording afterward, because I think this is actually a brilliant example of how many stakeholders see and think about their own point of view only. Because some of the comments in there, I think, exactly identify the problem.
Hello, this is Attorney Robin Harrington. I'd like to interject. It's not appropriate for you to respond to public comments.
Very good.
Your information? Okay.
I will continue on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me tell you about 2022. We finished the year with 1,939,492 tickets. That was about 20,000 tickets below last year, or 1%. California, you can see the numbers, 1.7 million, roughly 44,000 tickets lower than last year, or 2.5%. Nevada was up about 24,000 tickets, or 14% for them. So the sum was that we were down 1%, or about 20,000 tickets. As I've reported in the past, the largest excavator was still Osmos Utility Services. They completed about 314,000 tickets. 138,000 of those were new, and 166,000 roughly were renewals. That's roughly 93,000 tickets lower than how many they submitted last year. So in other words, Osmos was down about 93. The rest of California was up about 49. So just to show you how large of an impact this huge excavator has on ticket volume in the north. Looking at things over 20 years, just reminding you what you hopefully know already, but perhaps for some who don't attend these meetings often, you can see ticket volume has gone up dramatically over the last several years. And that just helps you see that. As far as our busiest counties, Santa Clara continues to be our busiest county, and some of these others jostle for second and third, although occasionally they actually take the top spot. Sacramento, Fresno, Kern, those top four kind of rotate, but Santa Clara is typically the busiest. But you can see when Osmos comes to town in certain counties, El Dorado, this is green for 2022. You can see their minimal tickets, and then all of a sudden they go up to over 90,000. Same with Shasta County and so forth. In Nevada, Clark and Washoe counties are our two busiest, which is Las Vegas and Reno, respectively. And this graph does not include the last 2 weeks of the year when we were on the new ticket system, because we don't have that broken down by county yet. Actually, we do, but there were some tickets that overlapped counties that were reporting in both counties, and we need to, we're going to use what we call the Polygon centroid to pin it down to just one, but we don't have that finished yet. So we're still working on that. Here's a statistic that I'm especially proud of, which is how much ticket volume has changed by phone versus online over the past 7 years. You can see in 2016, we were 65% by phone, then 55, 35, 21, 18, and so on. And then last year, we were down to 14% by telephone. And the total number of calls down to 272,000 compared to 1.6 million and change online. That's a good thing in terms of efficiency for the system, saving money for the utility operators who fund our contact center and so forth. So our percent of tickets processed online was 86. Our speed of answer was 67 seconds. That's higher than we wanted. We were actually at 47 seconds going into December, and up till December 15th, we were at 44 seconds, but then we did the cutover, which I will report on in a minute, because I know that's what you really want to hear about from me. And the very first day, our speed of answer was 47 minutes for that first day after the cutover, which was a Friday afternoon by design. We did choose that time being in between the holidays, in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so that everybody would be there, but before they take vacations. So that was a strategic choice to minimize, but at a time of year when ticket volume is low. Percent of calls answered within 30 seconds, 75%. The percent of calls that waited 10 minutes or longer, 1.9%. And this is including after how much they handled the cutover impacted us. So those numbers would have been significantly better if not for the last little bit of the year. And then our call handle time, how long each call takes, and just under 8 minutes, which is long. That's about 8% higher. We expect that number will go down as people learn the new system, including my staff learns the new system, but also again, as the easier tickets are done online, the tickets that are done by phone are the ones that are the quote unquote hard ones, as you've heard me say before. Okay, now let me tell you about the cutover to the new ticket system, which is what I know you're all anxious to hear about. First, I need to set the stage for you a little bit. There are dozens of companies that make software for utility operators to manage their tickets. There are some companies who, well, for call centers, for 811 call centers, there are 50 call centers in the nation. This is a map showing which software is used by those companies or by those 50 call centers. As you can see, there are only 5 vendors that make software for us to choose from. And then there are a couple of states that have said, we don't like any of the vendors, we're going to write it ourselves in-house. That would be Pennsylvania and the city of Chicago that does their own thing. But I just want you to be aware of the limited market. There is no out-of-the-box solution for what we're trying to do. It's very complex. We're pushing things harder than even big tech can handle. For example, what map can you find that has everything out there? Google doesn't have everything. As far as if you want roads, parcels, address points, all the other landmarks that people want, mile markers, etc. There is no product out there that has all these things on a statewide scale. Some counties are really good. Some cities are excellent, but nobody has it big. So anyway, I'm just trying to lay the stage, set the stage to introduce how complex the challenge is that we're trying to do. We chose to change vendors. We were using a ticket system created by Northfield Development Partners. We changed to a system created by Pelican Corp. We decided to split the system, so there are now two, one for California and one for Nevada, excuse me, one for Northern California and one for Nevada. And that is because, frankly, the stakeholders in each state complain about each other. California doesn't like Nevada rules and vice versa. So we decided to give them each their own system so that they won't be limiting each other on what they want to do. Okay, so how did the cutover go? Well, first, let's talk about what went well. The core functionality of the system is working properly. We had good cooperation between Pelican developer staff, USA North staff, and key stakeholders. Not all key stakeholders, which we'll get to momentarily, but most. Vendors that make ticket management systems. Remember, we can't just change our software. There are many companies that make software that receive what we send. So we have to coordinate with them so that we don't break their systems. Some of the largest ones are Earth, Cortera, DigTix, Boss 811, et cetera. Also, some of the large utility operators don't have solutions there because they, again, they didn't find an out-of-the-box solution that works for them. These are primarily utility operators that work in multiple states, but some, not all. So PG&E and AT&T are our largest utility operators by far in terms of volume of tickets that we send. But Verizon, Kinder Morgan, you can see the challenge they have where they're getting tickets from dozens of states, and each one call center is a little different. The laws are a little different. The ticket software is a little different, and so forth. So anyway, that's what's happening there. Also, the contract locators, UtiliQuest, USIC, Stake Center Locating, ELM Locating, et cetera. These guys also have their own in-house ticket systems. We were able to coordinate with them so as to not break their systems. Because again, we didn't want any tickets getting lost and therefore not getting marked that could lead to a damage. There are a couple of vendors that make software for excavators to help them manage their tickets. One's called 811 Spotter and the other did contracts. We coordinated with both of them as well to get them everything, not everything they want, but everything they need. And then we also followed up with the California Office of Energy Safety, their IT team, to ensure that they can get real-time access to the ticket database as well as electronic positive response. These are just a couple screenshots of stuff we had on our website. We had videos, webinars to teach both excavators and utility operators what was changing for them, user guides, and then contact information for our member services department. Okay, what else went well? Well, this is the first new ticket. Our ticket numbers now include the date, so they're very straight up or intuitive, hopefully, for what this means. So this was created on 2022, the month of December, the day of the 16th. So this was December 16th, and it was the third ticket of the day. Number 1 and number 2 were both test tickets, one that our staff did and one that Pelican did. So this is the first real ticket. Which is some random homeowner in El Sobrante, California, who decided that he needed to do a ticket at 12:30 at night to have his yard marked. And this is a proof of concept of the new system doing exactly what we wanted. Look at this polygon that the homeowner drew. No help from us. This was not done by telephone. This was done online. Homeowner drew it himself. And look at his work type, digging up plants in front yard and replacing. So this is exactly what we wanted, is the concept of it being self-service, that we can handle the massive increase in volume that we expect, as well as having them be able to draw a tight polygon to improve mapping for the utility operators who receive the ticket. So all that went according to plan, and I thought it was a great example. And again, some random homeowner at 12:30, not a plant. He's not an uncle of some employee. He is a he is a regular homeowner. Okay. Also, what else went well? We released a live chat feature that through our phone system that allowed people to submit questions online instead of by telephone if people wanted to do it that way, and it was well utilized. But we what I think went well is the staff exhibited exemplary commitment. We had hundreds of extra hours worked, very long days and nights. I think I got some pictures on the next slide of everybody hanging out until, well, actually, I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, yes, just great dedication by our team to help make it go as well as it could have. Now, what could have gone better? Could some things have gone better? Absolutely. Did everything go perfectly? No. The biggest thing was that Pelican developers were working right up until the time of cutover, literally to the last minute. So we did intend to have key excavators, including Mr. Downer, test the system, and West Valley Construction and some other large excavators who have worked with us on testing new features and so forth. And we were unable to do that because the system was literally being worked on right up until cutover time. We'd already postponed the cutover twice. You may recall we were intending to go live on July 1st. Then we pushed it to September and ultimately till December. But we could not go longer than that because our contract with Norfield, the previous ticket system provider, was up at the end of the calendar year, and we had no option but to go live, even though everything was not perfect. But things were working. This is just an example of some stuff that's not. This is a tool that we never had before that is new but not fully working, which is oil and gas wells, so that people, excavators who work down by Bakersfield and that area, find that it's very difficult to describe dig sites at oil well locations. And you can see we now have the wells on there so they can find the well they're looking for if it's an existing well or near an existing well and have confidence they're in the right place. Again, Google imagery, which we've never had before, the ability to turn on supplemental layers. Member Voss will probably appreciate the township and range layer, which is very useful for ag operations since farmers' fields often parallel these boundaries. But not all functionality is working properly. We have a list with a few dozen bugs that need to be fixed. Development is still ongoing. The last thing I'd mention is just change is hard. Human nature is procrastination. I mean, I hope it's, well, I had a very large excavator who is very involved in damage prevention tell me that he told his team multiple times about the cutover and to be ready for it, and his guys didn't do it up until the very last minute. So if we can't get some of our very best excavators to do things until the last minute, you see the challenge that's happening on a large scale. Some other things that could have gone better. The biggest functionality, key function that's not working is what's called ticket sharing. Right now, the system only allows users to see their own tickets of what they created and not tickets that others have created, such as people within their own company. And the problem we had is that we've historically made that available to the public where people could just key in a ticket number and see ticket details on the website, no credentials needed. And what's happening is we've had some bad actors who wrote a script to come to our website and scrape or harvest, extract every single ticket, not just tickets for their own company or their own clients, but every single ticket. And that's not okay from a privacy perspective. So we've had to shut down ticket sharing for now so that everything is done by credentials until they can fix that. I was hoping it would be done in time for this meeting. I was hoping it would be done on live cutover day, but it is still being worked on. And for that, I apologize. But that's what we're trying to find is the balance of sharing enough data to facilitate efficient work in the field by both excavators and utility operators and regulators who want to see the tickets and so forth, but not too much to violate privacy restrictions. The other thing that didn't go well is that it just took such a toll on my staff that I'm concerned about mental health and physical health even. This was the night of the cutover at midnight. We called it the war room, which is really our conference room, but we had a couple guys from Pelican on site and about 8 people from USAN staff being there. One of the reasons why things, but you see the challenge where they were building, where the developers were working right up to the last minute, once they're done building it, then we have to create training materials about it, right? To teach people how to use everything. So we can't build the training materials until the live software is done in terms of for screenshots and videos and all that. So just the tool was the extensive training materials and all of that. And then all the questions to answer after it was done. We had envisioned that Michigan 811 was kind of going to do the heavy lifting because they cut over from from Northfield to Pelican before us a year ago. But unfortunately, they built kind of a bare bones system that was not complex enough to handle the business rules that we have in California that were much more complex. And so we ended up basically start doing ours from scratch and not being able to copy the Michigan product at all. So overall evaluation, I'd say it's been a success overall, but much work remains to be done. We do have a rant or rave feature on our website where people can voice concerns. And here's a couple that I thought were indicative of others. This one is, when creating USA tickets in the new system, I do not see an option anywhere to include the site contact's email, just their name and phone number. What am I missing? How do I include the site contact job form and email on the ticket so they get notified automatically by email when I do, like the old system, that the ticket has been created, that a utility has responded, that they are clear to start work, etc. And this is them an excavator not understanding that now we have a program for excavators where they log in and keep track of their own tickets. That's called One Call Access. And that's a tool that we didn't have before, and that excavators didn't have, at least not for free, a tool to help them manage their own tickets. And so this was, an example of him not understanding the new system that way. He hasn't done the training or heard about it or whatever. And then here's a complaint from a member utility operator. It would have been nice for you guys to let us know that A, you were changing the source email vendor, and B, that the new XML schema would be totally different from the previous one. Also, removing data is not cool. Now we are having to go through a week's worth of ticket emails, and for the ones we do have, there is no response URL like there was in the previous one. It's as if no one thought this through. So, and this was from a GIS department of a county member. And so clearly this is an example of the field people did not communicate with their GIS department to tell them about the ticket system change. And so they were caught off guard and problems ensued. Now these have both been resolved. We've got these excavators as well as many others. We've got people taken care of now, but there was some chaos when things happened. So we have had quite a bit of positive feedback. People love the Google Maps. It's easy to use. You don't have to go through a long training. And that was one of the whole reasons why we did the cutover in the first place, was to allow this concept of the precise work area polygons to eliminate confusion in the field. We think this will facilitate more tickets being created online and less by phone. There has been a study done in Canada where they are convinced that there are fewer damages when the excavator creates the ticket themselves as opposed to by phone, because things don't get lost in translation. And so we don't have any evidence to prove or disprove that at this point. But anyway, we think this is the way to handle tickets in the future. So things are still coming. We do have a mobile app that is out for both California and Nevada, again, Northern California. Whenever I say California, I'm only referring to my service territory, of course. But right now, the mobile app only allows for new tickets to be created. Eventually, it will have all the secondary actions like no response, remark, etc. And then be able to view electronic positive responses. So you don't have to keep track of all these dozens of emails from utility operators. It'll all be centralized in one place. That's what we're working on. The eventual long-term goal will be to have the two-way electronic positive response where documents can be submitted as far as photos and maps and so forth. We have had requests for a mobile app for utility operators for them to use in the field because they don't want to buy one of the products out there by commercial vendors. They would like USA North to create that for them. We'll see. So unfortunately, that's about money. Again, sometimes some contractors did not feel like they were consulted properly or that they got what they wanted in every single way. But again, this is all paid for by the utility operators with zero funding from excavating contractors. Okay, the last thing, just a little bit about marketing. This is a map, or excuse me, a graph from the Karga Dirt Report, which I think you guys should take a look at, by the way. I haven't seen it on any of your agendas, but I think it would be useful for you to look at where damages are happening and why and what happened and percentages and so forth. But in relation to new advertising that we're going to do at USA North, we've had ongoing campaigns in the Bay Area and Las Vegas and Reno for a long time, but we are going to do some micro campaigns. I shouldn't say micro, they're big, but they're targeted to a smaller geographic area. This is a list of damages by county, or tickets by county in green, and damages in this kind of brown orange dot. And you can see that for USA North counties, the ones that had the most damages were Sacramento County. You can see we had roughly 65,000 damages. And also Kern County had a bunch, and Fresno County. So we're going to do some campaigns in that area. Sacramento is going to get their own, Fresno, and then one for the ag community specifically, that we can work on some of these areas where we have high damages that we would like to lower. So that's the last graph there. And that's the last of my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Wingate, for your presentation. So with that, Member Marjorie Del Toro made it look so easy. We'll proceed with the public comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please come up to the microphone. And those of you who are on the webinar, please raise your hand or press the #2 button. So we'll go ahead and start with in-person comments. Are there in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
All right, let's go ahead and move over to the webinar comments. Are there webinar comments?
There are no hands raised for webinar comments.
Let's give it a couple more seconds here.
We do have a hand raised from Randy Charland.
Okay, that's going to be a board comment. Are there any more public comments?
There are no public comments.
All right, seeing that there's no public comments, we can go ahead and move the discussion over to the board. So I'll go ahead and kick it over to Member Charlotte. Go ahead, Member Charlotte.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I have a couple of questions for Ann. I'm going to start with her. Ann, can you give an update? I know you had a cutover at the end of the year, the format change also. How did that go? And then on weather that we've been experiencing, what are you seeing as ticket volumes? Is it being greatly affected, or it's staying the same?
The cutover, from what I understand, went fine. There were a couple of things we found that we needed to change, but it was more on the back end. We did not have any issues as far as our ticket format change that went into effect January 1. As far as since January 1st through Friday, yeah, our volume is down compared to last January. And yes, I can say it's due to the rain, but people can't dig in the rain. But we haven't had, a huge drop off, but it is, like I say, it is less than the same amount of time last year, but we didn't have rain in January last year.
Okay, thank you, Ann. And for USA North, I guess the same thing. We're seeing because we have a lot of attention focused on this new system going in, that the tickets are down, and weather, just like we were told from Ann, I'm sure it's affecting. But is there system issues that are also contributing to this? If you can kind of touch on registration, I just want to make sure I'm clear. Is registration only for excavators or big tickets, or does even a homeowner have to do registration? And is that a long process? I know you said your first day you had a lot of calls, so I'm assuming a lot of people could not maybe enter a ticket. I'm assuming that. So if you can answer if that's true, and they were calling in, which caused a lot of hold time. And where is the hold time now? If it was really high, where is it now? And do we see issues that would be preventing call? Because I'm concerned that the system might have some issues of registration, or can't find old tickets, or not entering, that they're out there doing work without a ticket. I guess that's my biggest concern, if you could help me with that. If you guys have that same concern of the ticket volume so low, and yes, it's weather, but is it some other things? The one thing that I did hear today, 2022 old tickets are cut off. Is that also contributing to excavators not being able to call in because they can't grab it, and if they didn't track it and keep it, it's kind of lost? Or is there a way for them to find this old information on the old system to renew their? And then I believe they probably also are doing screening. If you have to actually enter your ticket completely again, there's probably screening that's going on, saying, this doesn't work. This isn't worth the effort. I'm not working out there, which I guess would be a good thing. And then just a couple other things. The changing the address. We've heard some excavators say that they're putting in the address. That's a known address. That's exactly where they're working. However, when they plot it on the Google Maps, it changes what they put in for the actual address, and it changes it to something different. And that's, hopefully you guys are aware of that. And that's going to be a fix, because if they're picking the address, they know where the work's taking place. If they pick it on Google and it changes it, that's probably not a good thing. Then we also heard some locking up issues. We're not sure if that's on your side, on the one call side, or it's the user. And in their discussions with these people, we told them, hey, if you feel it's not your issue, to contact USA North and see if you can kind of work through what they're explaining as locking up, which is they can't enter all their information, or they get kicked out, or a timing issue. So that's just a few things that, if James, if you can respond to it, appreciate it.
Okay, that was a few things. Yes, I'll see if I can remember all that. As far as volume, we are rainy also, so it's a little bit lower. We fully intended to have the old tickets migrated into the new system so that they could be queried and easily copied and so forth. But these are two vendors that compete against each other, and they don't play nice with each other. And as much as I kept being frustrated and saying, this is data, why can't we just put it from here into here? They were just architected so differently, which I didn't even think that was a verb, but apparently it is. They are architected so differently that they could not transfer the data from the Northfield system into the Pelican system. They couldn't do it in Michigan either. So we do have one in-house developer, and he wrote a program to allow the excavator to query the old ticket, and it'll pull it up on the screen, and then you can copy and paste it and put it into the new ticket system, but it doesn't do it for you. And we believe the volume is down for, I don't have any data on this. This is just my gut. Today's only January 9th. But my gut is that there are a lot of excavators who are saying, oh, all these renewals, I have to put them in. Well, maybe I better look at these and decide whether or not I really need this ticket. So I think a lot of them are kind of falling off on the wayside, that they're saying we don't need this ticket now. Interestingly, Osmos created 0 renewal tickets after the cutover. They did new tickets for every single one because they figured, well, why do I need to copy and paste this old stuff from the new one? I might as well just create a new one. And their type of work doesn't really warrant renewals since when they get there, they do the job and then they're done. But anyway, it's just interesting to see how certain excavators are choosing to respond. I'll be very interested to see once we get a month or two under our belts to have some data about, do we have fewer renewals compared to new ticket percentages? historically, we're roughly 38% renewals off the top of my head. And I think that number is going to go down, which I think is actually a good thing overall, because ideally the excavator gets out there and works and times and creates his ticket appropriately to when the job is going to be done, not creating it early, because we want them to dig when the marks are fresh and clean and bright and so forth. So we'll see. But yes, I wish we could have given the excavators more time. We did the best we could with the limited resources that we have. I'm sorry that I don't have more for everything, but that's how. What else do you need? What else am I missing for you, Randy?
So on registration, because we've heard about.
Yeah.
Is that required by both parties, the homeowner as well as an excavator, or is there?
Yep. All excavators, but we did that on the old system too. We didn't call it registration, but we maintained a caller database, right? That way, if the homeowner calls back, we don't have to ask them for their name and phone number, and we can search and so forth. So we did that previously and have for decades, as every one call center does, but this time we call it registration. And that way, because again, the goal is for the excavator to log in and be able to see all the electronic positive responses from all the excavators from all the utility operators in one place, as opposed to in the old system where they would have to go through their email, and they might have 10 emails for one ticket that they create from each excavator, plus one from the center, plus another one when the legal date is reached, telling the status of all the what every operator has done. And so we're trying to centralize it and put it all there instead of overwhelming people's email inbox. So that's our strategy. But yes, it does require registration. No, it is not difficult. It's just like anything online, where if you want to buy something online, you put your name and address and phone number and email so you can get a receipt. Very simple. We haven't had any complaints about that, except for the sharing, which is a major issue. And I'm not going to lie about that. It's a major problem, because companies that have many excavators within their same company, they want to be able to see each other's tickets so they can renew them or whatever. When Bob's on vacation, Joe can take his tickets and so forth. And right now we don't have that. So you have to share login credentials to do that. And that's not good from a security point of view, to have other people using someone else's login, but I suspect that's probably been happening for decades also. But anyway.
And then hold time, if you could just touch base on hold time.
Right.
You said that it was really, really long. I guess 2 questions on that. What was the hold time then? What were the issues of why people could not use the web? So they were calling in. And then where are we at currently?
Okay, so the whole time's under control. It was only bad for the first week. To give you an idea, I could share my screen, but we track this on a daily basis. And the first day of December 16th, which was a Friday, the average speed of answer was 14 minutes on that Friday. Now that was a slow day, and some people said, "Oh, I'll do it on Monday." Monday the 19th, which was the first full, and Monday's always our busiest day, that was 47 minutes. Then the next day was 22, the next day 11, 5, 3, and then all of a sudden we're back under 1 minute. So really we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days in which the speed of answer was over 1 minute. And then after that, back under control, including all through January. So overall, yeah, there was some pain at the beginning, but is it going to benefit in the long run? Absolutely.
All right. And then have you heard about the placing of the work area location and then plotting in Google, it's changing it? And then that's frustration with the excavators, because, hey, I know it's here, but when I plot it here, it's changing it. And that was expressed just as a really.
Yes, we're super frustrated with that. It's a Google problem. Their API is not functioning properly. We've actually, our in-house developer somehow was able to talk to like the head guy at Google Maps, and they're working on it. But yes, it's the problem is you put in an address and it jumps you to the ballpark. And if you're at that address, you draw your polygon, you're done. But the problem is oftentimes people put an address in their intersection just to get the map in the ballpark, and then they move around to a different spot, and that's where they're digging. And Google tries to be helpful by grabbing what it thinks is the address in that other place, and really it's not, especially if it's an area of brand new construction and things like that. So it's not perfect. We're working on it. It does require people to pay attention. I promise it's not supposed to function this way, but that is out of our control. And I'm not trying to say that to pass a buck. I'm just saying we're doing our best to get it fixed. But it is a big deal because it is Google. It's a Google Maps functionality issue.
So is that something that will improve only with a Google change, or is that something that you guys are working on to find a workaround that?
Yeah, Pelicans.
I guess my question to you is, can we lock the address that they put in and not change it if it doesn't match? Because I would think it would be more accurate than what it's plotting.
Yeah, we're trying. There's a tool called force validation where it will say, ignore what Google suggests, and so we're debating whether or not to have that be in every single time. They're working on that and testing as we speak.
And then, are you aware of this locking up or having to restart their tickets over?
That was only on the very first day.
Okay, so you haven't been getting any more. Okay.
Yeah, they did have a load balancing problem with the server, which all lives in Amazon Web Services in the cloud. So I have to admit, I was super frustrated by that. I'm like, what do you mean load balancing? You got the power of Amazon in the background, but apparently there's still issues there. And so, yeah, we did have that first Monday, and I guess it was it was the Friday and the Monday. So the Saturday and Sunday was so low volume, it wasn't a problem, but those 2 days we did have some problems with latency. And so people were thinking, they submit the same ticket and they say, did it work? And they hit it again. And so we had like some tickets go through 4 times for the same place. And so there were a little bit of problems there, but it's all resolved now.
All right. And so your next board meeting, I believe, is on the 25th. That's
correct.
A couple of weeks.
Yep.
You think you'll have some information on, are we back to kind of what we should see? Hoping maybe the rain subsides and we're not having this rain every week, because I'm sure that's a big factor. But again, are we missing tickets? Are these tickets not coming in, and just where are they?
Yeah, I'll have as much information as I have, but I got to tell you, I think you're going to see that the volume is going to be down regardless of weather, because I think there is some fewer members per ticket now that they can draw the dig site polygon tighter. So we'll see how that goes, but that's just my suspicion.
And I'd agree with that. But what about calls? Calls should not go down, right? We should still get the same amount of calls or something in that ballpark. As far as tickets being sent out, yeah, I agree with that. But, if we're getting so many calls, during the month of January and, we're half, where did they go? Calls, or contacts?
That's a good question. Lots of variables in play: economy, COVID, the law.
Yeah, and I think it's just,
I don't know.
I just think it's worth looking at that. If it's all those other things and it's not people not calling or can't call, or that's the one I'm sure you are too. Are we missing stuff where they're?
I'm not hearing any complaints about people saying they are attempting to submit tickets and cannot.
Okay. Thank you, James.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think the next board member whose hand was up was Member Voss, but forgive me if I'm wrong. Member Voss, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Munoz. First off, Ann, thank you for your presentation. And of course, James, our focus is on you today with all the situation here. Question for you regarding agricultural ACE. I know when your folks sent out all the notifications for training and everything, I passed that on to our people here at the company. And although I just never had a chance to really follow up with them to see where things have gone. But I guess the basic question for us is the ACE tickets that were submitted, let's say back in the summertime or updated in the summertime, are those still valid until they're due here later this year?
Yes, they're still valid. Yeah, I mean, They're good for a year as the law. Just because we change systems doesn't mean any ticket that was, I mean, a ticket created on December 15th is still good, you know, the 28 calendar days. Oh, you know what? I do, let me follow up on one little bit that I forgot about with Randy and the concept of the system changing. Well, let me keep going on yours first. I'm sorry, Member Boss. Yes, the ACE tickets are still good. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick on the ACE tickets. I wondered if that could just be the start of the year and it's on people's mind, or it could be that they say, well, let's see if this new system's easier, and then maybe some farmers are doing it. But we have noticed a little uptick in ACE tickets, which I thought was good.
Well, I know that in just a discussion with our group that, you know, this time of year is a slow time. And so one of the fellows that is kind of helped to be the guiding light for our team, it was suggested that, you know, it might be a good time just to renew them now during the slow time, prematurely, right, early, just so that they are not always knocking on our door when they're in the middle of their battles trying to farm in the middle of summertime. So yeah, that could be part of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I need to do a better job here this month of following up with them and seeing, you know, what issues, and even back to Dig Alert, you know, with what the changes they've made, how that might impact us. So hopefully by the time we meet next time, we'll have more input. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the next person we had with their hands up was Member Bianchini. Go ahead, Member Bianchini.
Good afternoon, James. I'll be brief. Logan said a lot for Preston, but you know, I'm a little concerned that any business that knows that they're coming up against a deadline doesn't extend that deadline so that you can beta test, and wouldn't have created so many of the problems that we have here that create the safety issues in the field. And as for your speculation on why there might be more ACE tickets or more tickets, or Randy saying there's less at this time, there's a lot of people that don't know their old tickets are gone. You can't access them anymore. You're saying that it's still valid, but it's not accessible, and you can't tell whether people have verified that they've marked or not. They're gone. They're not in the system anymore. So you have to create a new one to do that. And I'm really sorry to hear that your crew had to stay up late for several nights. Most of ours didn't get a Christmas or a New Year's because they had to get several thousand tickets in and then try to get them passed down to the other project management groups, because it's not able to just send them down. They had to make photo screenshots of them and put them down there and tell them exactly what they were. So obviously the system wasn't ready to go, and it wasn't ready to go because you didn't beta test, because you didn't have the time to do it, because you forced it to the end. So it would have made sense to keep the other system up and going until you could make a system that works. Instead, I just hope we don't have the incidents out in the field where people don't even know that either they don't have tickets or they don't have answers. The whole thing is just unbelievable, really unbelievable.
That is certainly a valid perspective from one stakeholder.
And a board member, sir, and a board member.
And a board member, but not speaking for all excavators, because we did not hear complaints from United Contractors, who are aware of everything, including ticket size and some of the other issues that have been brought up, have been involved in that.
James, I'm the president of the United Contractors Association as of this month, and I'll complain about it too, because I've heard plenty from the contractors. You're not hearing them because most of them don't understand it all that much yet.
Congratulations on that presidency. I hope it will be great to hear the voice from multiple excavators.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on. Let's remember that public safety is our #1 charge, and let's put that in the frame of everything that we do. We're in charge of everyone, and their safety as it pertains to underground infrastructure. And then let's go ahead and take the comment from our next board member, Member Del Toro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Member Bianchini kind of set the tone for me as well, for you, Mr. Wingate. Just have a few questions on the preparation of this. you stated that you had provided information to the excavators on what was going on, what's the access, but in the same breath, you also stated that you couldn't put the programs or the training materials together until after it was live. So I'm interested to know how much time you actually gave these excavators to be able to take the time to migrate. Were the tickets migrated into the new system? That's another question for me. What tools did you use? How often did you contact? I was really concerned with the way you spoke, as far as stating, I have it here, it seemed like you were putting it all on the excavators when it is our responsibility to make sure that they have enough training. So how many times did you outreach? How often, obviously, and what tools did you use to make sure that they were educated enough before the transition? And as a CEO of my own company, there's always time to transfer and to extend these programs as well. So I'm just interested to know what you felt was appropriate time, because there's a lot of concern about these excavators. I'm out in the field with the excavators and I hear concerns as well. So I'm interested to hear your take on this.
So we did the training as much as we had at the time. So what I mean by that is we had a video a month before the cutover saying, here's what the system looks like today. Then as it changed, we updated the video and the training material. So the very last version or the final version was done after cutover, yes, because as I said before, they were working literally right up until the moment before, but we had been updating it constantly along the way, including the documentation and so forth. I'd have to pull up how many emails we sent out and live webinars we did. But if you go on our YouTube channel, which I could pull up right now, there are like I forget how many, so over 4,000 views of how to walk through a new ticket that would be presumably watched by excavators. Although the whole goal was to make it intuitive so that it would be easier that way. Did it go perfectly? No. But I guess is there anybody who has software that does everything you want it to do?
Well, clearly there's not, but there's usually more than a month, especially during holiday season.
We postponed it to the holiday season on purpose because that's the slowest volume. But we did postpone it twice. We couldn't go further, and you can hold me accountable to that, I suppose, or my board of directors will hold me accountable to that. We did our best. It's very complicated with limited resources and staffing and so forth. I would comment, well, actually, never mind. I don't want the attorney to reprimand me. Never mind.
Okay, well, again, we're here to serve the excavators and utility owners.
Yep, exactly.
One other thing on the comment section, why are we limiting that? I'm curious to know that.
I'll have to double check on that character limit. There has always been a character limit though. On the last system there was, I believe it was 400 characters, and I'll have to double check. I was thinking that we had kept it to allow for 400, but I'll double check that. But the goal of the new system is that you draw a picture is worth 1,000 words instead of writing a paragraph. So 250 characters, I'll double check if that's I'm guessing it probably is because Mr. Downer is very intelligent, does a lot of homework. I'll double check that, see if it can be increased. But part of it is we can't just make whatever changes we want, because remember, we have 1,500 utility operators who receive the tickets, and any change we make affects their system about whether or not they can ingest it properly. And it's very complicated. We hear, I mean, how the feedback we got from operators today, I'm hearing from excavators that I'm hearing loud and clear, the excavators are not happy. At least some excavators are not happy. But we spent months with the utility operators to make sure they would get what they need and no tickets would be lost, and they'll get it in the way that they want so they could respond to tickets, all in the name of safety, to protect the excavators and protect the infrastructure.
I appreciate you looking into that. And again, were the tickets migrated into the new system or they weren't? Just to be clear, yes or no?
They were not migrated because, again, the two vendors, I could not get them to cooperate. The systems were too different. They couldn't be migrated. So we thought, okay, well, what can we do? Because we got to let people see their old tickets. And so our in-house developer wrote a little program that'll extract from the database the old ticket and put it up on a little, I'm sorry, I'm doing this like you can see my hands. Put it in a little window so you could see it. And then if you decided you wanted that, you could copy it over into the new system. And you could copy and paste it, or you could manually retype it, but it didn't allow for straight insertion, unfortunately. We really tried to make that work because I knew people would complain about that. We did our best. We couldn't get, that was the best we could do for tools to allow that to happen.
On the educational tools, when do you anticipate that being up, or is it already up on the website?
But it's already up. There's a whole page. If you go to US undergroundservicealert.org, right at the very top, it says click here for information about the new system. And then it says, are you an excavator or a utility operator? And you can go there, and then the videos and training materials and contact information for who can give you help. And there's the live chat. There's a ton of stuff there.
In Spanish as well?
No, we don't have Spanish yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wingate. Appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
hearing me out.
You're welcome.
Ms. Diamond, congratulations on 1 million. That's a great accomplishment. That's it, Madam Chair.
All right, well, thank you, Member Del Toro. We're going to go ahead and take a small 15-minute break if there's no objections. We were on schedule to take a break at 2:30, and with this very intense discussion on both the North and the South, we kind of lost track of that. So I'm going to move that we take a 15-minute break if there's no objections, and we will reconvene. Let's see what time is it now. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. So let's say 55. Is that fair? So it'll be like a little bit longer than 15 minutes. All right, so let's take a short break, and we'll see you guys back at 2:55.
Hey, Marshall, I apologize for the nomination there. Didn't need to catch you off guard. Thought it would be cute.
Yeah, you know, finishing up, getting rid of everything, then try to start taking things back is like,
Yeah,
oh.
I'm not doing that.
I just got rid of everything now. Oh, one more thing back, huh?
Happy retirement, Marshall.
Thanks, Margie. Thank you.
Whoa, I just heard about that.
Wanted to make sure you weren't bored. No, I'm trying to be bored, Ron.
Yeah.
Well, good thing you had Bill in the background.
Yeah, I appreciate Bill. he took it like a champ.
Yes, congratulations, Marshall, on your retirement.
Thank you, Amparo.
No more traveling? You're gonna be home?
Yeah, hopefully.
I'll give it 3 months.
I don't give it 3 months. My wife's driving me crazy. I'm ready to leave now. So.
That's what my wife says. You're never going to be able to retire because I'm not going to let you.
Yeah. I think I needed to listen to her when she said that.
Yeah.
All right, time's 2:55. I think it's time to end our recess and return to board comments. I think we were at Member Johnson. You were wanting to make board comments. If Member Del Toro, were you completely done with your comments?
I am, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Member Johnson.
Is everybody back, Madam Chair?
It looks like it.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I don't see Mr. Wingate and Ms. Diamond, so I'm sorry.
They're there.
Okay.
Member Charland, are you there? Oh,
I'm here.
there, everyone's here.
Okay, just a few comments. One before talk about the Pelican deployment from a former operator as it relates to the deployment and how one of the operators felt in regards to that deployment. But my first question, I don't know if it's directed at staff or Ms. Diamond, in terms of the no response on the EPRs, do we know what the base number is on that?
The base number?
Yeah, based on the transmissions, because I know we show what 500 and something thousand.
Right, 539, almost 540,000, that there was no response at all.
And so what was the base to that? Total transmissions that we would have expected a response from if we were 100%?
I would have to look that up, Member Johnson. I don't have that number right here.
Okay, thank you. My other question to staff is, you know, we get two reports, I understand 2 organizations, but we're trying to look at the same information, it's just presented in different ways. Is there a way that we can have a template that we can see the information that is being presented in the same way? Because I'm kind of confused. I got one way on the north and another way on the south. And even though it shows the different information, it's just presented in a different slide. And I was thinking maybe if there was a consistent template that could be used, that we could kind of make it a lot easier on us.
Yes, I think, Member Johnson, we can work with the call centers on a common template. I'm guessing, tell me if this is correct or incorrect, that it would be just a common template for a lot of the information that is common to both call centers, but then there might be a part where they would want to deviate to talk about things that are topical. Is that kind of what you're thinking, just for common template for all the standard information, but maybe allow them to go off template to add things?
I totally agree, Director Munoz. that's exactly what I'm looking for. It'll make it easier for me. I'm not sure about my peers.
And maybe if you and your colleagues might have some thoughts about what you liked about either presentation to try to preserve, I want to make sure what template we create is most useful for all of you.
Okay. That will work. Thank you, sir. As it relates to the deployment, as a former operator who has been dealing with this deployment early on, it wasn't just for me, a deployment for California, Nevada. I did have the previous deployment from the other state. And so it wasn't as simple as that one was, but it depends on what you're looking for and what you're asking for. If you want the whole enchilada or the majority of the enchilada, then of course, Michigan did not go and get everything that the system could provide, whereas we tried, I believe, to get as much as what we can that could be workable within our budgets. And so I think as I sit here and I listen to the comments, it was frustrating for the operators as well as the excavator and even the homeowners. If there was a way that could have been worked differently, I don't know. I've been thinking about maybe a smaller scale being done simultaneously. I don't know if that was possible because with the other contract that Mr. Wingate had to deal with, the deadline for that. And so could you have simultaneous systems that or kind of take pieces of the state or the cities and to kind of phase it out? I don't know if that would have worked either. But I do know that it was a big ask. I do believe early on, I had asked as the former operator that there was no way in the world that I could meet that first deadline. And I did go to the chairman as well as to Mr. Wingate about that, said, hey, we need something in our hands in order to start building our side of it. And since that part wasn't done yet and they were still working to develop it, it made it a lot more difficult, as Mr. Wingate kind of alluded to in his presentation, that up until the last minute, even up that day, they were making changes in the system. And so, how do you do that? My hat goes out to the USA North for the attempt to do it. And I do know that they work closely with some of those who had concerns and those who didn't reach out to them. But I do know that as far as AT&T, Telequest, PG&E, and some others, we had to, because we couldn't have any issues where we did not receive those tickets. We did not want a safety concern or damage come about as a result of that. So I don't have any advice other than a deployment of that size and magnitude probably needs to take longer than maybe what we deployed. Timing is another issue. I think it was good for us as relates to the end of the year because the volumes are down, some rain, but our volumes were down. I think tickets were down because of folks couldn't initiate some tickets too, so not just because of the rain. That first day, because there was a problem on the first day of the cutover that Friday when tickets started to come in. I think we had we didn't have that many tickets come in. I think our volumes were down at least about 50 to 60% that day. So with all that said, I just wanted to provide the feedback from an operator perspective that it wasn't all that smooth as well. So we had issues on both sides. There were some operators that did have some issues and were not aware of the change as much as communication that did go out to us. I do remember a lot of the communication that was sent out by USA North. Whether or not it was to the right person or not, that's neither here nor there. But I think if you have another conversion, that we probably need to start small and work our way up. That's my comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Member Johnson. Are there any other comments from board? All right, so for my comments, as far as my comments go, I'd like to kind of return to our responsibilities and accountabilities as a board. And some of those are to improve the safety of excavation around subsurface installation. And also to investigate the complaints and accidents to determine their causes, not just the accidents, but also the complaints. So I think that feedback is good. Every time feedback is given, it's a gift. We get to look at things and analyze things differently. But we're also responsible to periodically review the state of safety and excavation around installations in California and the resources. That's really important. The resources available to staff and the stakeholders. And in this case, it's not just operators, it's excavators, it's the map makers, the GIS, it's everyone to address and identify problems. So that being said, just kind of looking at the legislative framework, we have public education, we have damage prevention, and we have damage prevention program elements. And kind of in that realm, we have subcommittees, the ticket management process or the ticket process. And as I recall, that's Member Bianchini and Member Charland. So it seems, and I would love some board discussion on this. What do we think if we kind of ask that maybe we offline some of these comments and feedback, because it is part of our responsibility to look at these complaints and make sure that stakeholders have the tools, the resources to ensure that we have safety as our foremost priority, that maybe we take a step back and let that subcommittee look at maybe a listening session, a discussion, some kind of workshop. So I'm going to kick it over to that subcommittee or maybe the board at large to see what you guys think about maybe kind of offlining some of these concerns, because it sounds like there's plenty of concern from the board, concern from the public, even the call center is saying, that there's things that they would change. What if we take that and look at that holistically? What do you guys think, board members?
Member Bianchini, Member Charlotte and I are trying to resolve more of an industry oversight issue with how the operators can manage a volume of tickets so that he doesn't get overwhelmed on the first 2 days of the week and then nothing in the middle and back. And so kind of doing that I don't know what more we can do to what we're talking about here with the crossover. I mean, this is something that was done to us as an industry. And as Member John just pointed out, that it's on both sides, operators, and what came too fast for operators, and it certainly came even faster for excavators, because operators got a longer look at it than we did. We didn't get a look until here it is. You're going to start using this.
Board members, do you feel like there's value in giving the excavators a platform and an opportunity to discuss these things? Unfortunately, there was only one excavator that could be on the call today, and it was pointed out that they were able to have staff that could focus on that. Does it make sense? And again, this is a question for everyone. Does it make sense to have that opportunity? Because, I've heard a couple things, that there wasn't a lot of excavators that had negative feedback. Does it make sense to have that opportunity, to have that discussion? Or are we good with this? Do we want to hand this over to staff to kind of maybe do a little bit of an analysis? I understand what what the intent of the subcommittee was, but looking at the legislative framework, there is some opportunity for our board to look at the item of complaint, and you know, we can't think that technology isn't going to change. There's always going to be software changes. There's always going to be changes in the future. Maybe there's some analysis. Maybe there's some way that we can look at to prevent this going forward. What do you think?
I would tend to agree with you from that standpoint, but I think what you're asking is should we have staff put it on the agenda for our next meeting so that excavators can have a platform in which to discuss, or do either that or Member Charlotte and I do a some sort of an open forum for them to talk to us about it and what they would want to see for change.
And Member Charlotte, yeah, I mean, just so everybody's aware, we're in it right now. This thing's like the ticket volume is gone. Now, it might be weather, when probably is affecting it, but something else is affecting it. Just like Marshall pointed out, the volume has dropped. That first day, like 60, I think we saw even more than that, probably 70%. And they haven't come back yet, not even close to what they were. So we heard from Ann saying, hey, hers is down too. So what we're concerned about is there's something that's preventing these people to call. So it's very encouraging to hear James say, hey, we're not getting the complaints, but you know, in the next couple of weeks is going to tell once the weather changes, do we get the calls? You know, I agree with James. The tickets are one thing of transmission. That is going to go down because better identifying the work area, making it smaller. Okay, that should go down. But callers and web, you know, entering tickets, that should be pretty much, you know, coming back to where we usually see our January. And that's why I'm saying we're right in it. Is there something that's preventing these people? And maybe the resends or the renewal tickets we're never going to get if it's true that they just don't have access to it. But I do think we need to kind of take a look at this of lessons learned, and probably there needs to be a lot more involvement with excavators because they're the key other person on the other side to this thing, on how it's affecting them and a go, no go if we don't get this testing done, because testing is very important to have a finished product. And it sounds like we didn't have a finished product if we're still working on it right now. It's kind of like, hey, we had a hard date, or the One Call Center had a hard date and they had to meet that hard date. And that's probably not the best way to do something like this, is having a hard date that cannot be moved. And you just got to go for it, because I think you just have more issues. But getting more feedback and have testing done and have an actual finished product and say, hey, everybody, this is the finished product, now test. Because I think what a lot of people were looking at was kind of a moving target of, hey, here's how it looks now, and then some more changes would be made.
Member Del Toro. Madam Chair, I mean, here's my concern. We definitely want to hear what the excavators have to say, but is this going to be, are we going to realistically be able to make changes? And only Mr. Wingate will know that. So my concern is we have these sessions and then we do nothing about them. So I think we have to purposely focus on what we're looking for, what kind of feedback that would actually be transferable for Mr. Wingate's process. Otherwise, I don't know, I think we'll have more frustrated excavators than not if we're unable to provide them some solutions.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, so let me just summarize kind of everything from where we're headed. So we would like discussions, maybe solutions based. And, you know, I think Member Johnson said something really important, is that maybe that the deployment of this same technology in other locations was done bit by bit, whereas this one may have, and we don't know because we don't have the total investigation or the comparison, that this was maybe more aggressive than the other deployment. So maybe we should look at that so that we can kind of just, you know, look at how we in the future can have a measured approach with training and everything else, just more of a guidance. And I think that's not going to, maybe to Member Del Toro's point, fix it instantaneously, but it's like about bumper bowling, right? Put the bumpers out there so we don't have this issue again. One thing that Mr. Wingate has repeatedly said to build trust, and I think there's a part of just listening to what those concerns are, and not really approaching it from a hierarchy. And I would caution, like, language that says, operators pay for this and excavators don't, kind of sets it as, like a hierarchy of safety. And we just want, in order for us to have trust, it takes all of us buying in as stakeholders equally. So maybe there is value in listening to that, so that, the beta testing is extremely important. If there is an issue, make sure that everybody's on board of how to put those complaints in. Maybe there's some portion where we can kind of, be supportive and not, necessarily this is all we could do. So I don't know if that exists, but I would ask that maybe that's something that staff could look at. And I think there's an opportunity. I mean, eventually the South, perhaps one day will have to change as well. And it would be a good opportunity to kind of like look at lessons learned. So I hear everything everyone's saying, but it really just sounds like maybe more analysis needs to be done. And I would really be very interested in what Member John says as an engineer, who's someone who looks at this very strategically and kind of has, seen lots of changes come through. As what do you think? What would be the direction that maybe we should give staff?
Member Bianchini, I would be willing to do like Member Charlene said, as well as maybe do a workshop and we could hear from the excavators and then bring it back and then request some of the changes that they would like to see either done or improvements or things not necessary to that. And just to your point, and Mr. Wingate saying, and I've heard him say it too many times, that the operators pay for it and the excavators don't. That's not even accurate. The ratepayers pay for it of the utility, not the utility company. The ratepayers pay for it, funded through the PUC and with their guaranteed amount of profit. So, I don't think that comment deserves much more than that.
Madam Chair, I think what we should do is kind of track the concerns. And I think the way you do that is not put it on staff, is that you have the one call center go ahead and list these issues and concerns they're getting, let them solicit these issues and problems and give us feedback and what they're doing with it. Because right now, they're the ones they should be receiving the calls, they should be receiving the complaints. So why can't we just ask them to go ahead and be proactive and find out what's going on and give us the feedback?
I agree with that.
Yeah, Member John's here, and I was debating whether to myself of even saying anything, but this was a monumental task that undertaken by USA North, and frankly, probably the largest of the one call centers in the country. Being part of the national CGA, kind of hear these discussions, it's not the first time, and there's an ongoing friction between parties in the business here. So, but my first thought is that USA North, you're changing horses in the middle of the stream isn't the thing you need right now. So you need to just stay the course, get through things, and while it's frustrating for the excavators, do need to have a plan to hear them, to incorporate these changes. It sounds like there are software shortcomings of what's your Pelican? But I mean, getting through it, and I think Member Munoz said, change is part of what has to be done. Technology is changing. GIS, and different things are being incorporated. I do commend USA North for looking ahead. These issues with Google and different things, we take for granted. Things are moving smoothly, but things are changing rapidly technologically. And so, yeah, it's a tough subject and frustrating. And anytime you face change, you're going to be facing difficulties. I don't think we as a staff or the board really have, we can analyze it later and look back, but I don't think we could offer any solution that would help things at this time.
Are there any other comments from the board? All right, so I think with that, it sounds like I feel personally, and I want to hear how the rest of the board feels, but I feel confident to hand this over to the subcommittee that consists of member Bianchini and member Charlin to work with staff to kind of see what direction makes sense. Is everyone on board with that?
Member Voss, I think that's the correct approach here. And it's just going to take time for USA North to work through all the bugs and eventually all the problems that still exist will surface to the top. And that's where maybe this board and the committee can chime in at that point.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to go ahead and take this item and the follow-up, hand it over to the subcommittee and staff. And, I just, again, would just like to, my personal sentiment is that change is inevitable when one of the things that the caveat is in this is that there's a dependency on Google, and that may be something that we explore because Google is ever changing. And there is a potential when you depend on an entity that has as much change as Google, there might be bugs in the future. So looking at this, keeping in constant communication with all stakeholders as equal players is important, and then making sure that feedback comes back. And to Member Johnson's point, making sure that all those comments are available for our staff, and then we can figure out how we move forward in that. And I have absolute faith personally in Member Bianchini and Member Charlin. All right. Any other discussion before I close this item? I know we did a lot of discussion in this topic.
Madam Chair, I believe Ms. Diamond had her hand up as well as I think Mr. Wingate as well. But.
Is it okay, legal, is it okay if we take their comments? I don't want to have the hammer on me too.
I believe they were doing their readout, so.
Okay, go ahead, I'll take comments from.
But I'm not the attorney though.
Right? I don't hear legal jumping in. So Ms. Diamond, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to follow up on Member Johnson's question about basically the total number of ticket transmissions that needed to have a response compared to the 540,000 that there was no response. And that would be 3,954,142. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Diamond. I appreciate that.
All right, and are there any more hands? Okay, no more. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this item and move on to item 7, which is distinction between unmarked and abandoned lines, which will be presented by staff. So the next item before the board is an information item on a discussion of the distinction between unmarked lines and abandoned lines and how the distinction influences board efforts to promote the accessibility of buried infrastructure location information to excavators. So Executive Director Marino, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the end of the last year, the Abandoned Lines Committee decided that if we were to address the issue of abandoned lines, we needed to better define them. In researching how abandoned lines are defined in different industries, we discovered as staff that abandoned lines most directly become a problem when the excavator discovers them, at least when it comes to excavation work. And an excavator discovering an abandoned line doesn't know that the line is abandoned. The government code requires them to treat all lines as active, or to presume all lines as active. And so really the problem for the excavator is not abandoned lines per se. The problem for the excavator is unmarked lines, many of whom may turn out to be abandoned. And if an excavator knows that a line is abandoned, if they are somehow given that information, it's a lot easier for them to manage around it or work with the operator to determine a plan of action than if they don't have that information. So it seems like a large focus when we're thinking about the problem of abandoned lines is the problem of developing an appropriate process for excavators to use to determine the status of the line, whether it's active or abandoned, and specifically who the operator is. So staff wanted to propose that the board consider kind of this reframing of the problem, that an excavator, their focus is identifying the owner of the line, and from that point, then the operator and the excavator can figure out a plan of action. We have a lot of written material and have had a lot of discussions about the problem of abandoned lines. And so it may be reasonable for us to reconsider the way we talk about the problem, whether our previous work is perhaps not directly associated with the problem that excavators see in the field, and how the abandoned line might, or abandoned lines committee might want to reconsider their use of the word abandoned, and we can consider necessary changes in our naming practices. So that's really all this short staff report is. It's just a discussion that the real problem ends up for the excavator not being abandoned lines. It ends up being lines that are unmarked, and how to address them. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, so it sounds like we're clarifying the question, and we will start the discussion by proceeding with the public comments on this item. If you would like to make a comment, please come up to the microphone. For those on the webinar, press the raise hand button or #2 to enter the queue. So we'll go ahead and start with in-person comments. Are there any in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
All right, let's move on to the webinar. Let's give it a few minutes or a few seconds here. Is there any webinar comments? Let's hold for a second to wait.
Yes, we do have a comment from Jerry.
Go ahead.
Yes, can you guys hear?
Yes.
So on the abandoned lines, is there any way that we can get that described on the ticket, that there's abandoned lines in the vicinity? That was one question.
Sir, would you mind identifying yourself and who you're representing?
It's Jerry Berlin, Jerry's Trenching Service.
So for public comments, and I think this is what our legal was advising us, typically public comments are made and then you're done, and then we don't comment on them until after all the public comments are made. So it's not typically a question and answer. That's a workshop style. So if you could just continue on with your questions and your comments, and then we'll proceed with the next comment for the next person.
So the first one was, could they be identified on the ticket? Second was, when they are identified, can they be identified on size and type? And then third, not completely relevant, but inserts, the word inserts on abandoned lines can be identified better. That would be it.
Thank you for your comments. Are there additional public comments?
There are no other public comments.
Seeing that there's no additional public comments, either in person or on the webinar, we will proceed with board discussions. Would any member like to begin the discussion?
Member Voss here, I would concur with, and I believe you, Member Johnson and now Chairman Amparo, you guys are on the Abandoned Lines Committee. I would concur with the assessment here. That really, the line in the ground, no one being able to mark it is really the problem to start with, right? That it's an unmarked facility, and the challenge is definitely always to determine who is responsible for that, or whether they want to claim ownership or not. The challenge is going to be to see who ultimately walked away from that line. I mean, per the federal rules regarding the natural gas as well as the petroleum pipelines, it alludes that basically the federal regulations say, irregardless of the old rules, it appears the original operator, the operator who last ran it, probably has some responsibility for it. But the challenge is going to be always determining whose the line belongs to. So I'll be interested to understand and hear from other board members in the industry on when you run in that situation, how do you ultimately deal with it? You just stand around and look at it for the next 2 months, or do someone do a hot tap or do something to determine what the heck is there? Because I don't know, eventually you got to make a decision and go ahead. But you at the same time, of course, you have to be concerned about safety. The only reason I bring this up is that we had this situation on one of our farms in a leveling operation, and it was very frustrating to go out and try to find the local operators in the area to try to have someone step up to the plate. But I don't know that we ever were able to get there. This happened to be a situation where the line ultimately got struck and fortunately was empty. But at some other point in time, we might not be so fortunate. That's all.
Thank you, Member Voss. To Member Voss's question, does anyone else have any on the board have any more discussion on how they're seeing abandoned lines be treated?
Member Bianchini, to Member Voss's, the way we have to handle it is, yeah, you're right. If we expose it, we can't proceed, especially if it's in the line of contact or in the pipeline that has to go in. We do go back and put a notice on the ticket. There was a line found that was, nobody marked, or we used to be able to with enough characters there. And eventually, we'd have to wait. We'd notify them that we're on standby at that portion of it. We'll move on if we have to on there. The caller that earlier talked about it, yes, that he's right. They're supposed to be on the ticket. All lines are to be on the ticket, and that the size, type, and quantity of lines are to be put on the ground as well. And so if you read 4216, you have the ability to charge for that and the timeline that it takes to do it. And to the answer to your question, Member Voss, no, we do not tap it. We don't touch it. Gas lines, and I'm sure Member Johns is going to talk to this, but there's residual in there. If they haven't been nitrogen treated and so forth, they can still explode on you, even though they're not currently necessarily pressurized live. But, gas or petroleum products or anything are very volatile still. And we tell our guys, you do not touch it. Don't touch it. And I was telling staff earlier, we've had guys that come out and locators say, yeah, it's abandoned. Just go ahead and cut it out of the way. No, we don't cut it out of the way. If you want to cut out of the way, you do it and you document it, because we don't want to be charged later when you were going to try to lease that line to someone else. So there's a procedure that you have to follow.
Member Voss here. So my question back to you, Ron, is, do you literally just build around it, or, sometimes you just work around it. You just can't touch it. Is that the answer ultimately?
Yeah, but depending on the circumstances, if if we're doing a gravity line and it's in our lining grade, we have to stop. You would have to go back to redesign if it's live, or you would have to, if we're doing a pressurized line, a force main or anything like that, then yeah, we can build around it. And usually you have the engineer go ahead and redraw around it and stuff, even if it's not located, because we've exposed it with our vacuum excavation and stuff, but sometimes, you don't get it if you don't know it's there, and, you come across it with your excavation, you still stop everything right there and go back through the USA process. And everybody's got to come back and check their records again, unfortunately. And I know what you're talking about because I've dug out in the valley, and so you have operators of petroleum lines that don't even exist anymore sometimes. And I mean, in Kern County, we ran across that quite a bit when we did a huge 13-mile water pipeline out there. And it was a tremendous effort to try to find the owners and make sure they were abandoned and so forth.
Yeah, Member John's here. So, yeah, and like Member Bianchini said, you call the engineers. And so it is, the abandoned lines, I've been on the CGA Best Practice Committee on Abandoned Lines for, it's been at least 10 years, and probably haven't made any headway with trying to work as a consensus on this. But, I mean, a couple of the issues are, one, rural lines versus urban. And then the other, the biggest issue is operators, they have these lines, they have franchise agreements, easement agreements. Some of the real old agreements, they were able to, they didn't have the teeth in them that modern, pipeline agreements have. So a lot of operators just left. There are lines I've run across that are still full of crude oils and things like that. So just like Member Bianchini said, no, you don't want to start cutting into them. Just taking the operator's word, takes a responsible research requirement and a proper tapping procedure, and it requires everybody to get together in a group meeting so that all the operators are aware of it. 4216 does have, shows that if you can put a circle A around an abandoned line, that is terribly helpful for everybody, so that you know that abandoned lines in the area. It keeps you looking for the live lines, and it's a big issue. I do appreciate what staff is talking about even almost just defining what abandoned is, because like I said, there's these agreements. Companies don't want to keep things on the books, so they don't want to be found. And so identifying if it's abandoned or if it's unknown, those, just the wording alone helps you, in addressing it. But I think we need a lot more effort, and but I think we, as the board and as the state of California, we're taking the right approach to this. So I think moving forward with kind of how staff is proposing, we're heading the right direction.
All right, thank you, Member Jones. Are there any more board discussion items regarding the definition change, or at least staff exploring the definition of abandoned lines and defining the problem scope? All right, so as far as what I'm hearing from the board, and if I got this wrong, please correct this, is we're okay with staff perhaps changing or narrowing down the scope of the project to make sure that we're defining what abandoned is, and it's not, I don't want to be responsible for this line anymore. I think that's what I'm hearing from everyone. So I think we're all in agreement. All right, any more discussion on this item? All right, so with that, let's see, where are we? We'll move on to information item, tools for public reporting and unmarked line information. Or is that it? Oh, I'm supposed to give you a recess now, but I think, should we power through it, or do you want to take a recess? Or no, this is the end of the discussion. Sorry about that. All right, so item 8, are we still having that on the agenda? The information item, tools for public reporting of unmarked lines? Or is that for tomorrow?
I think there's no reason why you cannot look at that today. So we can move on to item 8.
All right. Everyone good with that? Moving on to item 8?
Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is item 8, which is the information item only. It's tools for public reporting of unmarked lines. And I'm going to go ahead and send that over to the staff. So the next item is information and demonstration of the public reporting of unmarked line information, discussed on how the tools can be used to allow excavators and utility operators to report unmarked line information. I understand that the Energy Safety Data Analytics team will be presenting. Are they available today? Are they ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Okay, Mr. Moreno, would you like to introduce them?
Yes.
Yeah.
thank you. I'll go ahead and start. Today we have Stephen Lai, who is manager of Energy Safety's Data Analytics Division, as well as Jennifer Reed, who you may remember, who's a data specialist within the division. They're here to demonstrate tools available to you that can be used for excavator reporting of abandoned and unmarked line information. As you have discussed in prior meetings, and this meeting, there's a problem when an excavator identifies an unmarked unmarked or abandoned line, and no utility claims it, and then the excavator just has to rebury it. It's unfortunate in these conditions that the line is not only discovered, but physically exposed. So the location is determined to subsurface utility engineering quality level A or B. I'm sure Member Johns can clarify the details on that, but well described. Then the information is essentially just thrown away. That leaves the line there for the next excavator to find. I believe Member Munoz calls these lines Easter eggs. Excavator reporting of these lines to a central database can be a solution. I'll stress can. Mr. Lai and Ms. Reed are presenting their tool set with this problem in mind. When reviewing the information, however, keep in mind that technology won't solve your central policy questions. Questions like, for what should this information be used? How should an excavator access abandoned line information in an identified work site? To what level should an excavator rely on publicly submitted data? Are we talking unmarked or are we talking abandoned? What process should an excavator go through before submitting? I think we're getting to some of the questions that the commenter on the last item identified in determining, how can abandoned lines be identified on tickets and information other than just what's put on pavement. These questions will remain for you to decide before you can implement any such solution. And so with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Lai and Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Executive Officer Marino. Jenny Reed, Data Specialist with Energy Safety Data Analytics Group. I will share my screen now to bring up our presentation. Actually, it's saying that my screen sharing is disabled. Can you guys enable me?
All right, try again.
Okay. All right. Are we looking good over here?
Yes, looks good.
Yep. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so Stephen and I will be presenting today on tools for public reporting of unmarked line information, specifically field data collection with ArcGIS's Survey 123 application. The problem we're looking to address is the classic scenario where excavators encounter facilities that are unmarked and unknown but any knowledge that they ultimately uncover about the facility is not retained. At a high level, by not capturing this information, the scope of the problem remains anecdotal. No data set currently exists to inform policy solutions. At a more granular level, at any given excavation site, this scenario is likely to repeat for future excavations, perpetuating the safety hazard that unmarked lines of unknown origin present to excavators. So I included a quote here, and I like this quote for this topic because it captures a big part of the appeal of the Survey 123 tool, which is just the ability to get started. So we'll start out today with a brief overview on the proposed tool, ArcGIS Survey 123, and we'll review how field collection with Survey 123 works, look at some example surveys and an output dashboard, and we'll briefly discuss our department's access to the software. Following our review of the software, Executive Officer Marino will introduce a board discussion on policy questions relating to potential implementation of the Survey 123 solution. So for many of us, the word survey might conjure up images of Family Feud and web pop-ups, but for Survey 123, survey just means a custom electronic form that a person fills out, which then sends data into the ArcGIS platform. You may be familiar with ArcGIS as a popular software for mapping and analyzing locational or spatial data. It is the platform that Energy Safety uses to manage spatial data. So the survey is then the tool by which, with minimal training, people, including the public, can enter data from anywhere via desktop or a mobile device. And if the user's offline, say in a remote location where they lack cell service, they can enter the data for later upload when they reestablish a network connection. It's a little counterintuitive, but spinning up a survey and making it public is quite easy with this tool. The complications really lie in the details of how the tool is applied, which we will talk about a little later. And because Survey 123 is built on ArcGIS, the uploaded data is immediately viewable in Energy Safety's ArcGIS environment. This environment then is where we can perform analysis on the collected data and generate outputs like maps and dashboards. So we'll move into some examples here. Sorry, my Zoom thing is like covering up my screen. There we go. So here is a basic survey example. I'm calling it basic because it's pretty straightforward in terms of elements that you may be familiar with in a form, like a date picker, like radio buttons here to make selections, check boxes. This is an example survey that is to collect electrical utility damage. I think it actually was implemented maybe in Canada, but it's one of the examples that Esri makes available for people to see. Free text, typing in free text field, more checkboxes. This is all just, what was needed for this application. What information did they need? But stuff that is interesting probably to you guys will be this element to upload pictures. This button is an example of like how you can click a button if you're on a mobile device to actually take the picture like there. Or if you have a picture saved to file, then you can just upload from a file. So I'm sure that incorporating images would be of interest. And then here you can see the location finder. So this is like pretty typical of how you could indicate your location for the submission. But it's not like set in stone. There's still customization that is available. You could see as I move the point around at the bottom, the lat long changes. But like this example doesn't have lat long entry, but that is something also that would be possible. Here it's like you can enter in an address and it'll zoom to the address. you can zoom in and out, that kind of stuff. It's probably very typical for how any user is used to interacting with a map in an online interface. So that's one example. And then this is an example of a survey that includes logic. By that, I mean certain survey questions will only appear if certain answers are given. So this is an example for a COVID-19 screening form. And you can see when I click yes, it drops down, pops open. We want more information about that. But if I click no, then that's not cluttering up the user's screen space. And again, here with like the symptom checker, it's like if I click fever, well, it knows, well, we want to know what the temperature was. But if I click, cough, it doesn't ask me for more information because the entity collecting this information decides what's important, what's needed, and what isn't. And you can see here too, like this doesn't have a map part of it. So a lot of this stuff, it's just designed by the needs of the data collection. But this type of logic is especially for an interface where the public or, really anyone could be looking at it, then, you want to keep it clean and not confusing. So the logic helps with that. And then here we have a dashboard example. So this is actually a screenshot of one of Energy Safety's existing dashboards. And this dashboard is generated from data collected by electrical compliance field inspectors via Survey 123. That's the tool that they use out in the field to collect this data. And dashboards like this reflect real-time data as it's uploaded from the field, and they're highly customizable. So like we include this example just to provide a sense of what's possible. But it's by no means like a template or, a dashboard could be customized to whatever the audience's needs are. And that's ultimately shaped by the intended use, who the audience is, what kind of data they need up front. And that can be multiple audiences could have their own dashboards based on the same data set, just depending on, what information is of interest to that specific consumer of the data. So as I mentioned, the tool availability is under the system that Energy Safety already uses. ArcGIS is our platform that we use to manage spatial data, and Esri is the company that owns the software. Tools and the related analytics tools through ArcGIS are available for development under Energy Safety's existing Esri contract. So field data collection using this tool is something that we already have the technical ability to implement. But our practical ability to implement it hinges on details of policy and probably also input from the legal team, which brings us to our next section on this item, the policy discussion. And I will hand it back over to Executive Officer Marino to facilitate this portion of the item. And I will be available for questions along with Stephen.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. So before I hand it over for public comment, just wanted to kind of summarize the way to think about this and the primary reason why we'd wanted the data analytics team to show this tool off was to demonstrate that the barriers, the limitations that we have in doing any sort of data collection about abandoned line or unmarked line information isn't related to technology. It's related to policy. And so the question that if we want a system, no matter who owns it or where it's stored, to collect this kind of data, first we need to understand what is the purpose. My understanding from previous discussions is that purpose for collecting this kind of information has been for where there's an operator or where there's no operator that's been identified and we don't want to lose the information. I know Member Johnson had identified that he didn't think that operators should necessarily just be dumping their abandoned line information to a third-party system and not taking responsibility for their lines, which is, a potential consequence of creating a database like this. So first, what is the purpose? What is it collecting? Is it collecting abandoned lines? And then therefore the submitter has to go through some sort of process to identify it as an abandoned, and then they're the ones who are identifying it as abandoned, or is it more broader for unmarked lines? And what are the consequences of that? These are, and then the question of, is this something that is useful for excavators to just access through the ticket system, which would need to be integrated into call center operations. So I'll just turn it over right now just to say that there's more questions than answers here. But we wanted to present this just to get everyone to start to think about what is it that we want to do if we do want to make sure that there's we're capturing abandoned line information that operators are not claiming. And I'll turn it over to you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And thank you to the Energy Safety Data Analytics team. Now we'll be turning it over to public comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please come up to the microphone. And if not, if you're on the webinar, press the raise hand button or #2. Do we have any in-person comments?
There are no in-person comments.
All right. Let's proceed to the webinar. Are there any comments or hands raised in the webinar?
There are no hands raised in the webinar.
Let's give it a couple more seconds. Oh, Mr. Wingate has his hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Wingate.
To no one's surprise, my hand is up. I just wanted to say that, earlier there were comments about Google not potentially being a good source for mapping. I would be interested to talk with Jenny and the energy safety team to see what they're doing for their base map as far as Esri as a map provider, but what about the data, addresses, parcels, roads, all that stuff. I'd be happy to use a more official data if the state of California can provide that. I've tried to do that for years, but I would love to revisit that topic if things have progressed from a technology perspective at the state. Thank you.
Are there any additional public comments?
We have a comment from D. Woolley.
Go ahead. And if you could you please state your full name and where you're from, what entity you're representing?
Yes, my name is David Woolley. I'm a land surveyor, and I work for D. Woolley and Associates in Orange County. One of the things that James brought up there about Google Earth or some of these, let's say, out of the box backgrounds for mapping, they vary greatly in accuracy. And so if you use Google Earth, for example, it's not uncommon to be off several feet, and a lot of it's with pixelated data, and it depends on pixel sizes and a bunch of technical things. And so one of the issues is that having information that is inaccurately located is actually in some regards more dangerous than not having the information as it exists today. Because we get it up from a computer, we tend to think that it's, I saw the latitudes and longitudes displayed in that ArcGIS system. I'm very familiar with that. And when you see something out past the decimal place, 8, 9 positions, that leads you to believe that, or leads a person to believe that is very accurate data, and they'll turn around and put it in their phone, and their phone's only accurate within 5 meters or 16 feet. So I think we have to have an awareness of that, and I'm going to speak to it at the next item, but I just thought an opportunity here to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other public comments?
There are no other public comments.
All right, seeing there's no further public comments, we'll proceed to board discussion. It looks like Member Charlin already has his hand up, so I'm going to hand it over to Member Charlin to start the discussion.
So I was deciding where to bring up my comments, either on the unmarked abandoned lines under item 7 or now, and I chose now. and I brought this issue up before in the past, so I apologize if you guys have heard this over and over, but the mapping we receive as locator in the locating community is very inconsistent. There's no locator map that they give us, and it has everything we need. Just some of the names I wrote down is we'll get as-built, network maps, engineering maps, utility structure maps, underground maps that can be turned on for overhead, off, and different things can be toggled on and off, and then circuit maps. We'll just get their best map that they believe will help us the most, and they'll give that to us, and that's what locators will use to locate. We'd love to have everything about underground lines. Overhead stuff, not so much, but underground abandoned items is very important to us to help us with our accuracy. And we could change the wording. I would agree that on the excavator side, that unmarked to them, because they don't know which one of these industry mapping department items that they would call it. And I wrote down some of these that I'm familiar with, which is abandoned lines is one, vacant lines, empty conduit, replacement. We'll get replacements where they're not removing the old lines, they're just replacing it with, you know, a bigger quantity or a bigger cable, and they just leave in place somewhere out there the old structure. And then we hear about selling of some of the assets, and buyers don't always want all of these assets. They want, you know, the ones that probably make them money, and they take them on, and the other ones just kind of go by the wayside. And then there's always this one that we've always heard, which is a cost or a fee to report their assets. And then the worst phrase I hate when I'll hear it from certain utilities is saying, oh, and all of these are future, which means we could turn them on at any time, and then they become an active line. I'm not sure, I guess this goes back to this survey of who's our audience, but, you know, on one end, getting information out there once it's found, keeping some data, I think would be very valuable for maybe how we're talking about design and field meets to say, hey, here's your project, and we can kind of look at some database and say, hey, here's some information that we found in within your work area. Or when we do write this A in a circle around it, I mean, it's basically telling the excavator, you may run across this, but do they really know when they run across that versus an active line? So it'd really be nice for them to go somewhere to say, hey, I got an A with a circle around it at this utility. Can I go to this database and see if they have something on it? And I think it just is good to track as much as of these things that people find out there, because I'm not even getting into all the stuff that could be found in Los Angeles, downtown, you know, LA, that goes back to, you know, the 1800s of what utilities they used, you know, redwood ducking and all that kind of stuff. But I just want to throw this stuff out there that, you know, we'd love as a locating community to get as much information to help us with our accuracy and the terminology a lot of these companies use when they're not putting it on their maps.
Thank you, Member Charlin. Do we have more discussion from the board?
Yeah, Member Johns here, and kind of adding on to what Member Charlin said, that, you know, as the engineer on a lot of projects, you know, the abandoned line comes up, and I get called out for projects and things like that on, certain high visibility type work. And really, I'm doing the same thing that the excavator is doing. I mean, truly, the guys out digging are really the field engineers on this. They're trying to put the puzzles together. They open up lines, and they're guessing which is which, and they're working with the field locators, and they call up meetings and trying to scramble and come up with the best pictures they can, and with real limited drawings. So I think what we're talking here is the right direction to at least have some form of finding it and putting, you know, representation of it. If it's not going to be perfect, you know, like Mr. Woolley said, you know, this isn't for accurate digging or something, but it does give you just some tools in the field that you just have to take with a grain of salt, but at least it's better than nothing. Remember Charlene mentioned Los Angeles, and I use that as an example. It probably shows my ignorance that they're the only one that I really see as a GIS system. But the city of LA has Navigate LA, and it does, I think it is tied to Google, at least their maps and stuff, but it is a GIS system and it's used for parks and everything. But they do put in, you can access their old maps. And so they'll be like 1960s maps, but you can go in and find them by location, pull up these old maps, and you can find, old Pacific Bell stuff and stuff. So if you're out in the field working, it does help. You get at least a map of what it would look like, 40 years ago. And that's a great start when you're looking for these unknown lines. So I think building upon that same kind of architecture that this ArcGIS has, it'd be like similar to what they have. And I think other communities in the state are doing that. So yeah, I think we're in the right direction, at least looking at this and pursuing it. So that's it.
Thank you, Member Johns. Are there any other board members that would like to discuss this?
Yeah, Member Bianchini, you guys have heard me say this a lot of other times, but there are utility companies that create a big safety hazard for us because they don't locate their lines that they don't have any cables in yet. And, we're digging along, and when we're trying to locate them with the vacuum excavation, we find 4 lines down there, and we believe that that's what we have. And there's 8. There's 4 more below it that have the secondary and primary in it. And these are spares for later. And it's a huge risk when you're taking a 100,000-pound excavator and then you're trying to dig around and get through it and past it. And all of a sudden you hit a 12 kV line that takes out about 6 blocks. And not to mention could be put the excavator operator and everybody in danger. If this was a requirement and they had to keep and they have the locations that we know on it. They tell us that we don't do that on lines that don't have cables in it. It would be nice if the engineer could map out that information ahead of time and at least let us know. They're spares.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I want to probably piggyback on what Mr. Whitley was speaking about. When you have a system like this, I like this system, but I think what you can do is to enhance it a little more to kind of address that concern is maybe when you do abandon something, you put some type of marker out at the site, right? Either an offset type marker, if you can't place it where the actual abandoned facility is. And if you use this tool, you'll have an idea that there is something out there and you can confirm exactly where that is based on the permanent marker that's been placed out at the site. So just wanted to add that input.
Thank you, Member Johnson. Member Voss, were you going to say something? I saw you leaning forward like you're going to unmute yourself.
No, I was just actively listening. I think the issue that Member Bianchini brought up with the utilities putting in spare conduits is it's a definitely can be an issue. We've seen it in our agricultural setting from time to time. So anytime we can start getting this stuff marked, for the future, for future excavators, I'm in favor of.
Thank you, Member Voss. All right, so if I'm to summarize what I heard, it sounds like everyone's on board with it kind of overlaps with the last conversation or the last item on the agenda, which is abandoned lines, are we using it like that junk drawer? We just throw everything in it and it's everything. It can be a vacant line, empty line, spare line, a line that I didn't want to have as an asset anymore. I didn't want to worry about it anymore. If that's the case, then that really does affect the direction. And it sounded like there were some concerns. So it was brought up that if we put this in this in this repository or in this ArcGIS system, does that mean that the owner now, gets to wipe their hands clean of responsibility? Is there a process for the abandoned lines? If so, what does that look like? And there's also how is this useful to the engineers, the excavators, and how does this kind of resolve all of our previous discussions, and there's been many, and how does this build into it? So is there anything I forgot to mention in the summary of what we discussed?
That was great.
All right, so my 2 cents is always always the same, but one thing that I did hear, and I think maybe this is more of like, I'd have a question. If the process is, how do we proceed using technology from today? How do we go through policy, and how do we still hold everybody accountable in the name of safety, right? So I think if you take what is observed, an abandoned line, and this tool allows us to define it. Is it any of these things that we came up with? I think the previous item will help us eliminate the junk drawer. And if so, how do we close perhaps what looks like a report of what we're observing? So for example, I think Ginny had a few of them, but like the fever example, if I observe that there's an abandoned line, like Member Bianchini has said in the past, I put this in here, but there's some kind of accountability. I can see if, the owner ever came back and claimed it, or came back and added it to the map, so that there's some kind of record of, hey, I did tell somebody, and maybe they did or didn't, take that owner back. And I think that's something that I've heard Member Bianchini, Member Charlin, even Member Johns kind of bring up, like, what happens when I do find something? So I think, and then that goes back into what Member Johnson's saying, is we don't want to give everybody a pass to throw their stuff in the junk drawer, right? And we don't want the repository just to become another junk drawer. So that being said, I think that's what everybody was kind of discussing. If there's anything I missed, otherwise, I will close the discussion on this item. All right, well, I know I pushed because I know item 8 was tentatively scheduled for tomorrow, but I think it went really well with 7 and 8 kind of went hand in hand because it's all about abandoned lines. So if there's no objection, I think we can wrap up today's discussion and leave item 9, 10, 11, and 12 for tomorrow. Are there any objections to that?
No objection.
None.
Objection.
All right, then I will, I'll go ahead and recess today's meeting and resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.